All right. Hello, everybody out there. If you could only see what what the last hour, Shayna, at least the last 30 minutes have looked like for us, especially the last 10 minutes. Terry thought for sure uh, she's going to have to take on the show here by herself. But so, welcome to our second broadcast of Curtis Lake Primetime. My guess is that probably as time goes on and we get much better at this, that it's not going to be as funny or awkward, I should say, at least. But joining me tonight is Terri Richer. She is our Global Outreach Coordinator. So hello, Terri.
Hi, Josh.
Thank you so much for joining us. You'll find me constantly reminding Terri as we're doing this to speak into her microphone because she's going to have a tendency to shrink back, I'm pretty sure. But Terri's here to share with us some things about her personal journey when it comes to global outreach, and she's going to share some great stories with us. And then also we have calling in. She is recently back home and reunited with her husband. So everybody say hello to Doris and Tim Eckert. Hi, Doris.
Hi, Doris.
Hi, Pastor Josh.
Hey,
How are you? Hi, Tim. Good to see you again.
hey, good to see you too.
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, thank you for lending us Doris for the 36 hours or so that she was here. It was a great visit for those of us, especially those of us that got to spend a lot of time with her, even outside the Sunday morning worship service. But and thank you for joining us tonight. Doris and Tim are going to share with us some more stories about their work as missionaries and just what God has done in their lives, and share with us some stories of hope. And then we also have a very exciting segment that Doris has helped put together for us, and I'm going to entitle it, "If You Thought COVID Quarantine in Maine Was Bad, we have some stories for you." And Doris and Tim are going to share some of the experiences that they've seen throughout the world. I'm turning myself up, Shayna. Thank you. One of the things that we're certainly missing is a great connection between the producer and the host. So we'll have to figure that out at some point. For now, more? All right. I don't know how much more I can do here. We're pretty cranked out, but excuse us while we're trying to figure this out. How's that, Shayna? Better? All right. Well, hopefully it sounds great out there. All right. So you ready to get started, Terri?
Sure.
All right. Doris, Tim, you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right. So we're going to save the COVID quarantine segment for a little bit later. First, I'd like to start with Terri. I asked her to share with us kind of going back to the beginning of global outreach, or missions, and this heart that she has. If you haven't had a chance to get to know Terri, you'll find that this part of her life just kind of oozes out of her and really, I think, informs how she lives her life. And so I'm really privileged to have her here working with us and leading us when it comes to our global outreach initiatives and the real partnerships that she longs to develop on a personal basis with so many people. Her heart is certainly for Africa, as her experiences have kind of brought her there. But it started somewhere, Terri, right? Why don't you take us down that journey a little bit? Because maybe there's somebody who's listening to the broadcast that really hasn't embarked on that journey. They haven't gotten to that place where they've figured out how to be where they are to, this more missional kind of mindset, this idea that, wow, God has called me and purposed me for something. And so if I could just, begin to take even those baby steps to surrendering to that purpose, what does that kind of look like? How did that journey all start for you?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. But as I reflected back, and I've remembered this many different times, but it started with a missionary coming to our church, much like Doris did this past weekend. And I don't remember the missionary or where they served, but I remember looking back now, how that night after I listened to her stories or his stories, I laid in bed and I just thought, God, could you do something like that in my life? Like, could I do something like that? And where would I go? And God just said to me in this like it wasn't an audible voice, but I really sensed him saying, "Not now, but soon." And so it was enough for me to just have peace to rest in that. And so fast forward 10 years, and I had my first opportunity to go out onto the mission field, and we went to Mexico. And at that time, my kids were old enough to go with me. And so that was a real treat to be able to take them along with me, along with many other kids from our church. So that was the beginning. And then we went there 2 different years. And then the next opportunity I got was to Honduras. And so that was a different kind of project that was just kind of starting churches. So we would fund the churches, but go there and just build the relationships and get them started on the project. So that lasted 3 years when we did that, and it was just great. It was a real start to learning how to build relationships with people in other cultures and other countries. And so that we did that for 3 years, and then we kind of paused a little bit because we had a pastoral shift and took a break for a couple of years. And I wondered if I would ever have another opportunity. But then Marissa Stam was the global outreach director at that time, and she asked me if I would go to Ethiopia. And every time that I've had the opportunity,
Hold on one second, Terry.
Oh.
Let's can we just stop and
Sure.
really take a look at this picture here?
Yeah.
Because I told Shana when I saw this picture, this was not that long ago, right? I mean, maybe
This
10
was-
years ago, maybe.
Yeah, well, it was like 9 years ago.
Okay, and we've
10
known
years
each other longer than that. I do not remember this Terry Richard for some reason. But anyway,
Yeah,
so
I didn't see that picture.
I do remember that Brian Samia. So Brian is obviously the one gentleman in the picture, and that is still his face right there.
It is
So
a little younger, but it's still his face. So yeah, so I just really would have a hard time saying no to any invitation to go somewhere. Sadly, to my husband, but I just felt like this is kind of why I was born. Like the more I learn about other cultures and what God is doing around the world, it just made me realize how big God is and how He loves the whole world. And it just my opportunities to step into that and to see that played out has just changed my life. But it all started with a missionary coming to the church, I guess.
yeah, and I mean I think I caught it right, but you said it was 10 years between that moment and the first time you actually went on,
Yeah.
Your first trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was happening over the course of those 10 years, or was that really just sort of this latent dream that you didn't even really think that much about?
Well, I was raising 2 children, and
One very difficult one.
one very difficult one.
I did not look in there. I met Scotty, Shana.
Yeah. So they were really young. Shana, I think, was at the time she was 3 or 4 maybe, and so I thought, well, how do I? We started a business, a family business. How do I just drop everything at home and go? And so I just had to settle in that it wasn't God's timing. I didn't know when it would be or if it would be, but I settled in it and I just rested because I remembered what He said soon. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And now here you are,
And now here I am.
dying to get back to Ethiopia, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other places that you feel like you want to go and visit, or is it you're pretty happy just beating that track over and over and over again?
Honestly, because I've gotten to know every one of our partners and who, just build those relationships, a part of me would just love to go to every place that we have built relationships and support people and ministries in all over the world. So I would love to do that.
Yeah. That's great. So any advice that you give to somebody that's out there that has never done it? They've never gone on a trip. They for whatever reason, we could talk about all kinds of the obstacles that people face, whether it's fear of going to a place that you feel like is maybe so much more underdeveloped than we are, that it's just going to be a scary kind of environment that you're not used to or accustomed to. Obviously, financial considerations, sometimes people think of that as an obstacle. How could I ever actually afford to get there? For the people, yeah, probably that are, part of our church, part of our faith community, that we feel like, this is a great experience. This is definitely an experience for everybody. Everybody that is able to should take the opportunity to, not only to pray and to give from here where we are, but if you have a chance, get out there and actually experience what it's like to immerse yourself in another culture and among another people and actually love, other human beings in the flesh. What would you say to them?
I would say, if when the opportunity comes, because they will, just step into it and trust God with it, because He's just done amazing things in my life through those experiences, and especially the people in Ethiopia, because I've gone so many times that they've just become my family. I honestly care about them like they were my family, and so that doesn't happen until you have conversations and you look them in the eye and you see what they face on a daily basis, and then you begin to pray, and so that builds the relationship even more. And so I honestly, I feel like sometimes I'm in full-time missions because it's what my thought process is most of the time, and I pray for them all the time. And I was on a prayer Skype call this morning praying for our Salamtha friends, and so it's just that builds the connection even deeper. And so I would just, say step out into it. Step into what God has opened up for you to do.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
You just have to do it. You have to step out and
Trust.
and trust the Lord. And that's great. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So as we maybe look to our guests from all the way down in Missouri, back to Tim and Doris, maybe you guys, before you get into some of the stories that you want to share with us tonight, talk a little bit about how did this all start for you? I mean, I get that you're professional missionaries, right? I'm a professional pastor. No, but what did that look like for you guys? I mean, how did this journey begin for you?
Well, it started for me first. I always knew when I was a kid that I was going to live overseas. I didn't know what that meant. So I studied to be a teacher and thought that I would just get a teaching job overseas. And then when I was at a secular college and on a track scholarship, and I just had this time with the Lord where it was a transition time really between God being my parents' God and God being my God. And I told God during that time that if He presented Himself and showed His presence to me in a way that I knew that He was absolutely real, that I would give Him everything and that I would do anything He asked me to do.
Mm.
And as soon as I did, and He showed up in a big way, I transferred to Bible college and started heading towards missions, and went to the field right after graduating from Bible college in 2001. So I was there, and my husband was pastoring here in the States.
My venture was a little more of an adventure, I guess. I actually graduated from Bible college with a youth ministry minor and a biblical degree, and so I started out as a youth pastor. Thinking through some events that happened, that's where God was calling me. I was pretty confident in that. My wife was pretty confident we were supposed to get married, and so she came back to the States and we got married. And I can remember our first year of marriage was a little intense because Doris had calling on her life to missions, and there's some things happening in Indonesia, and she wanted to get back. And I remember, proposing maybe a 2-week trip. And, she didn't want to talk about it, and so I was like, okay, whatever. And then I thought, well, maybe Pastor will let us go for a summer internship over 3 months, and she didn't want to hear that either. She just it was just burning in her, and I didn't know at the time, as we were going through Doris daily was giving this back over to God and saying, "Look, you've called me to marry my husband. You've called me to missions. One of the two doesn't work here." And so as she gave it back over to God, God's placing on me. And after about 8 months, God just said, I'm not calling you for 2 weeks. I'm not calling you for 3 months. I'm calling you for a lifetime. And it was at that point that I knew that we were supposed to go. Still a lot of questions. I remember I went to let my pastor know that I was turning my resignation. I was actually at a Nazarene church at the time. And as I walked in the door to tell him, I said, "Hey, I got something to tell you." And as I went to shut the door, he goes, "Let me guess, you're going to the missions field." And my jaw just dropped because I maybe messing with me. I'd called him ahead of time. Of course, she wouldn't do anything like that. But I was just like, "How did you know?" And he goes, "God's been speaking to me the last couple months about that." So that was a huge confirmation for me, But it was never anything that I'd dreamt about since I was a kid. It was nothing, I was just willing to go and do what God wanted me to do, where He wanted me to do it, and that's how that came about.
That's great. And it's been all piece of cake since then, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, no problems.
It's been an adventure. It's never a dull moment.
So share with us. I thought it'd be great for you to just kind of share with us some, one or two, maybe three stories. Just how you've kind of seen the experience of what it means to bring hope, into a world, into a culture that is not ours. It's different from ours. So just share with us, how when we decide to get involved, when we decide to pray, when we decide to sacrifice dollars, and when we maybe even have the opportunity to kind of head out into a different part of the world to serve ourselves, like what impact does that actually have on individual lives? What does that actually ultimately amount to in the way of God just, bringing hope into a person's life?
Well, do you want to start?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, Indonesia is a tough place to minister. It's a tough place to see, salvations. We've had a handful that was really exciting. And sometimes God just brings those people into your lives, without you realizing it initially. But we'd started an English service when we moved there, and we had a team from Australia that was a YWAM team that just showed up, and they were looking for people who spoke English that they can do ministry with. And so we said, "Hey, you're welcome to come and lead worship at our church on Sunday morning." Well, that Sunday, they called me and said, "Hey, I've got this young man from Afghanistan that wants to come to church. Is that okay?" I said, "Sure. That's no big deal. We have a number of Muslims that come to our church, so I wasn't sure what his status with Jesus was at that time. But so he came, and that Tuesday I was starting a men's Bible study, really trying to get our men engaged. We only had a couple men. It was a new church plant, so didn't have very many men to begin with. Well, it turned out one guy from our church came, plus the YWAM group, plus this one Afghan guy who brought another one of his friends. They're there. It was a good Bible study. We were going through a Bible study that was by some those. It was a really cool Bible study, I guess. Well, the next week, the YWAM guys were already gone. Our guy from the church didn't come back, and this guy from Afghanistan not only brought his one friend, but brought two more. So there was the four Afghan guys that was there. We went through the Bible study, and it's just nothing that really connected with them so much. But we were going through one of the questions, and one of the questions was have you ever had anybody coach you spiritually? And the one guy kind of got real quiet and goes, "Well, Pastor, we were kind of hoping you would do that." And so I said, "Hey, that's awesome." I said, we dropped out. We started doing a deal called Discovery Bible Study, where we go through the Word and they discover what the Word has to say. I still at that point had no idea what their position was with Jesus. Come to find out, one of them had actually become a Christian due in Afghanistan with the U.S. government, and he actually had to flee Afghanistan because of his conversion. Got someone took a picture of him getting baptized, and it got out on the internet, and so his life was in danger. But while he was in the camp, which they spent like 3 years in this concentration camp before they were able to be released. They he shared with these guys, and these guys were really curious about Jesus. Well, had the awesome opportunity to baptize the other three of those guys, and it was really cool because the two guys, like I asked him, I said, "Are you ready to be baptized?" And the two guys like, "Yes." The one guy goes, I'm gonna wait and make sure that I'm serious about this. And he came to me about probably 2 months later, and he goes after church, and he goes, "Pastor, what are you doing today? Are you busy?" I said, "Well, yeah, I've got a number of things going on." He goes, "Well, I'm ready." I said, "What do you mean you're ready?" He goes, "I'm ready to be baptized." And so I said, "Hey, Tuesday when we do say we're gonna go and we had to do it very quietly because once again their families would be in danger back in Afghanistan as well if things got out. But I've seen these guys. We were walking them through the Word, and they were growing. They had a lot of timidity in terms of sharing their faith. But right before I got to come back, or right before we came back from Indonesia, I had a meeting with a Muslim man who asked me to come and share about this video. This guy, Zakir Naik, who is kind of like a Muslim apologist, and he wanted me to explain why I didn't believe like this guy did. So we had an opportunity to meet with him and like 7 or 8 of his friends in this Muslim coffee shop, and I took one of the guys with me, and it was there that he proclaimed openly, "I used to be a Muslim, but now I'm a follower of Jesus, and here's why I'm a follower of Jesus." And it's just so cool to see these guys grow in their faith. The one guy, he had a wife and 2 kids in Afghanistan that was living with his brother. Every one of these guys have this horrendous stories, but this one guy, was encouraged. You need to share with your wife what God has done, and he did so. And his wife became a Christian on the phone, in Afghanistan, and so she actually moved out of his brother's house so that during Ramadan there wasn't any question about why she wasn't fasting and why she wasn't following traditions of the Muslims. It's those kind of things that's I never thought God was going to take me to Indonesia to reach Afghan Muslims, but it's really exciting. Out of there, we had a couple other Afghan guys that was able to baptize as well. That wasn't a part of that initial 4, but just super cool how God can use you when you're just obedient to do whatever it is He wants you to do.
That's great.
You want to share?
Doris, how about
Did
you?
you want me to share? Okay, I'll share the other story. I didn't know if you wanted to show the photo of the
Oh, that's right. We have a
guys with
picture of
Timber
the, yeah.
Yep, you have a picture of the original 4, but
And these are all grown men
we
now,
can't-
right?
yes. So
Except for the
one
guy in
on
the middle.
Far, yeah, yeah. The one in the more yellow-looking shirt, he's still a younger kid. He's about 19, I think.
He's 21.
21. But he first came to Indonesia at
17.
So, yep, those are our guys. We pray for them often, but we can't show their faces for their safety. So,
Sure.
all right. So I guess I'll tell you my story. We were on our second term and living in the village, and I was homeschooling my 3 kids, and I had taken a period of time where I felt the Lord was telling me to just minister in my home, just to be mom and wife, and not do any ministry outside of that. And there was a lot of things going on in our home at that time. Life wasn't super easy. We didn't have a lot of electricity, and we didn't have any except a generator. And we didn't have, or no, actually by then we had electricity because we had the freezer going.
Yeah.
So we had electricity by then. And I think we had running water by then. But anyway, so I'm homeschooling my 3 kids, are in elementary at that time. And that morning, God spoke to me and told me to take a bag of groceries to a neighbor's house. And this neighbor was a little gal named Siska, and she would come to our feeding ministry. And she would bring her little brothers and her little sister. She had a brother named Boy and a brother named Lazarus, who's my son's best friend, and Lazarus is deaf. And then Grace, her little baby sister. And she was responsible for them every day. She's about 14 in this picture, and 14 or 15. And the reason they would come to the feeding program is that they were very poor. Their dad had left them. Their mom would go and try to find enough work to buy some food for each day. So they kind of lived day to day. Well, that day, they woke up and she cooked up the last of their rice, and a neighbor came and knocked on the door, and she had the baby. The boys had already gone out to play, and the neighbor came from up on the mountain, and the neighbor, she said, she described, was very old and looked like they hadn't eaten for several days. And she just felt great pity for them. And the neighbor asked for something to eat. So she took the last of the rice and she wrapped it up in a banana leaf and she gave it to the neighbor.
Which the last of her rice means the last of their food as a whole.
Yes, everything she had. And so at that point, she began to panic. And she's like, I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? The baby started to cry, and she realized when her brothers came home and asked for lunch, she was in trouble because Lazarus and boys said, we want to eat. And she said, oh, we're fasting today. And they were not happy, and they stormed off. So she took baby Grace, and she decided to go out in the woods, in the jungle, and see if she could find some bananas or just find something so that they would have something for dinner that night in case her mom didn't come home with any food, because she was afraid her mother would be very angry. And I guess I have to back up just a little bit, because all the time she coming to our feeding ministry, every week we would ask her, do you want to put your faith in Jesus? Do you want to trust God to be your father? Do you want to be a follower of Jesus? And she was very insistent that God didn't care about her and God didn't see her, and that she just wasn't interested in that. And I kept encouraging to pray, to talk to God. And she's like, nope. So anyway, that day she went out in the jungle to find some food with her little sister, and nothing. She couldn't find anything, and she was just at her wit's end and completely frustrated. And so she fell down on her knees and she called out to God and just said, you know what, God, if you really do care, then help my mom come home with food, some dinner for us somehow, or help me find some food. And she still didn't find anything. And so she went home, and while she had been gone, it had been bugging and gnawing at me all day that I had not taken any food to her house, like the Lord had put on my heart that morning. And so it was well after lunch that I finally got done with homeschool, and I just went to my freezer and I grabbed a frozen chicken, and I grabbed out of the cupboard and some vegetables out of the fridge, and I took them to her house and I set them on her front porch. And this is her house. Very, very modest. 5 people lived in that little structure. One big room, and then one little kitchen in the back, and no running water, no electricity. But anyway, so I set it there on the little platform, and she wasn't there, so I left. And not long afterwards, Siska came running to my house and just overjoyed, and was just like, Ibu Doris, God dropped food from heaven on my door. And I'm like, how do you know? She said, well, the chicken was like an ice cube, and she doesn't have refrigeration, so she didn't understand that you could freeze a chicken. She's like, I think, it's so blue up there, and it's so, it's probably cold. And so that this food is from heaven. He dropped a chicken from heaven onto my door. He sees me, he heard me pray, and he sent me food. And I never, ever told her. I lost it after she left. But I never told her that I had taken food to her house. I had the opportunity later on to baptize her. And truly the food was from the Lord, because I don't know that there's ever been enough time I've felt so impressed to take food to somebody's house than that time. And I guess my encouragement and how, I see the Lord using us to bring hope was, just walking in obedience, taking an obedient step right when God spoke, doing what the Lord asked, led her to faith, because that was the moment that she was crying out to God. And it was really amazing to be a part of what God was doing in that moment. So that's the story of Siska and the frozen chicken.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for that. All right. We're going to take a little break here because it's time to cook. So I don't think Doris and Tim have ever been over to Romania, but I think we're going to head over to Romania and make something pretty yummy here. So Terri, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah. Do you like cooking at home?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Well, this particular dish is something that even those who don't like to cook can very easily make. So check it out.
And welcome back. I'm Mary.
And I'm Patty.
And today we are making Romanian apple cake.
I love your apron, Mary.
I love yours.
They're beautiful.
Yes.
Our friend Marion gave us these from Romania. Actually authentic aprons from Romania to do our apple cake with today. So apple cake in Romania is one of those simple things that like kids learn how to make this really young. So when they get home from school and they need a snack, they can just kind of throw this together because it's just a few simple, quick ingredients.
Nice.
And then they have an after school snack. So we're gonna just whip this up and put it in the oven and we'll see what's going on. So the only thing I'm missing is I need apples.
Yep.
And
Wait a minute. Where's Josh?
he was gonna go get apples, wasn't he?
Oh.
You don't think. Thanks for
Hi, everybody.
coming, Josh.
Hey.
You got us some apples?
I got the
You
apples.
found them?
Sorry
Okay.
it took so long.
Hannaford is like 3 minutes from here, you know.
Yeah, I didn't go straight to Hannaford,
Okay.
but
you found them.
I did find them.
In the
Yes,
apple aisle.
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Did you know that apples don't grow all year long
In Maine?
on apple trees?
Pretty much anywhere. They don't grow all
Okay.
year long. Yeah.
Right. Noted.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Well, thanks for getting the apples.
Sure.
So if you want to cut those up for me, I need them peeled and cored, and then you can cut them into wedges. You can cut them into chunks. There's no like wrong way to do this one.
Okay.
You got it?
Peeled and cored?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And Mary and I are going to whip this up real quick. So we've got flour and sugar. You want to just dump those right in there?
Certainly will. Dumping the flour.
We've got a little bit of baking soda here, a teaspoon of that, and cinnamon always goes with apples, so we're going to throw a little cinnamon in there.
I like these precise ingredients here. Just a little bit for those of you at home.
A little bit. People know that I don't actually follow recipes.
Wedges
People
or
who know
chunks,
me.
doesn't matter. Whatever you
People
want to
who
do.
know me. Did I mention kids can make this? You know, they don't have to chop them all exactly the same as everyone else does. It's a free-for-all.
Like a swirly whirly.
All right, so we've got some oil. We got a couple of eggs.
How precise the egg cracking.
Nothing but a professional here, right? Those can go in. A precise tablespoon of vanilla, right about there.
That is very precise.
All right, that can be stirred all together.
I like this.
So, and it's kind of a dry, crumbly batter a little bit. It's going to be really thick.
Okay.
So we're going to mix the apples in, and that's actually going to help it mix together. Okay, Josh, you did a lovely job with those apples.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you. So yeah, this batter is like really thick.
Mm-hmm.
Those apples can just get slid right
Slid in.
slid
in.
slid right slid right in there.
So it's not a grammar exercise, everybody. It's just a cooking show.
I'm just a homeschool mom, that's all. Give that a stir.
Ooh.
Look at
Right?
that stirring technique.
So the moisture from the apples will soften up that dough a
I
little
hope
bit.
it does.
But when it goes in the oven, that's when the magic happens.
Okay.
And it's gonna just melt that dough right
I
into
feel
it.
like I wish I cut these apples a little smaller.
No, you're good. That whisk is amazing though, isn't it?
That is a pretty cool whisk,
Yeah.
yes.
Ooh.
You have much cooler things in your kitchen than I have in mine.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah, we're good. Thanks for
All right.
that.
What's going in
Yeah,
there?
yeah, going in there.
Look at that baking technique. This guy is no stranger to the kitchen.
That's right. I'm big on washing dishes.
Scraping technique is a real clue when you're gauging somebody's cooking skills right there.
Spread it around.
Yeah, spread that around. Thanks. All right, now it's gonna go in the oven at 350 for probably about 45-50 minutes. So we'll be back.
All right.
Our cake is out and we are ready to serve and try.
It's got kind of a crusty glaze on the top from the sugar, the apples.
Can I get the middle piece?
Absolutely.
Like this one right
Like
here,
right
Josh.
in the middle.
He wants this one right
Make
there.
it difficult
No
for me.
crust.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow, that looks like a child made it.
We're gonna take that as a compliment.
Okay, there we go.
All right, go ahead. Gonna have a little cinnamon
Enjoy.
flavor. Apples are nice and tender.
Mm,
It's like they're the perfect size or something.
Something like
it's
that.
amazing.
Still on how you chop them. I like how it gives that like a sugary, crusty glaze on the top.
Mm.
It's very light.
Yeah.
Fluffy.
Nicely done. Good job, Romania.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What'd you think of that? Sorry to our guests, but we're eating it right now. Huh, Terry? It's good, isn't it?
It's very good.
It is very good. So we'd send you some, but you're too far away. But you all saw how
before the
easy
shop-
it is to make it. So a piece of cake. No pun intended. So first of all, I need to clear the record here. That little thing about me just kind of parading off in the apple orchard, that was Shayna making me do that. I wasn't really sure what it was for, but it's good to know that I can no longer trust her for any of this like weird side stuff that we're doing. I can see that it's going to be used against me. So that's your daughter. Yeah. Thank you so much. I learned over the course of my time with Doris a lot of things. There were a lot of stories, and I don't think anybody else knows this. But at one point in our conversation, Doris said these words to me. I don't like dog. Let me say that again. I don't like dog, D-O-G. And my follow-up question, of course, to that was, why do you know that? So I don't know if we're really going to get into why Doris knows that she doesn't like dog, because we say things like that all the time, right? Like I've said I don't like sour cream, even though I've never actually eaten sour cream. I just know I don't like it. But that's not what Doris was doing. Doris was actually telling us somehow from experience she doesn't like dog. So Doris, I apologize if I wasn't supposed to tell that story. I don't remember you telling me I couldn't, but anyway. So, all right. So we're going to close out our time together tonight. Oh, their video's frozen. Okay. Doris, you still out there? Tim, can you hear me?
We are.
Okay, they're there. All right, so we might not have them on video, but at least we have their audio. So we're going to do if you thought COVID quarantine in Maine was bad, we've got some news for you. So Doris, tell us about COVID around the world.
Which one do you want to hear about first? In
Whatever
India,
one you want.
Asia?
Surprise us.
Okay. Well, we could start with something lighthearted. In India, we got seating charts for social distancing. So there were different things. There was lockdown, social distancing, and there was sanitization efforts. So social distancing meant that we got a chart, and we have a family. So we, even though we have an SUV that's, we could only put 4 people in the car. And everyone had to wear masks. So there was one day that my husband and I were driving together, and it was just the 2 of us, and I was breaking the rules, and I was in the passenger seat, and we got stopped at a checkpoint and had to roll down the window so they could take our temperature, and told that I needed to move to the back seat, to which we responded, "We're married. We slept in the same bed last night." And they said, "Well, that's nice. You can do that, but car." So I had to crawl off the seat to the back seat and sit in the back seat for the rest of the ride home.
It makes sense. I don't know what the complaint is here. But
Right. Social distancing in your car.
absolutely.
You even
All right.
had to wear a car if you were the only driver. So that was sting. And the sanitization. Do you want to talk about that?
About the
The spraying the car.
Yeah, so you would drive, if you drove from city to city, which you were discouraged from doing so, going into another city, they would stop your car, and they had one of those sprayers like you'd put weed spray in, to kill your weeds or whatever. The little pump they have some kind of diluted sanitizer. They sold the outside and the inside of your car while you were in a nice fine mist on that. Going to immigration. There you go. Going to immigration, you would have to actually walk through a machine and close the doors, and it would install on you to make sure it killed any germs on you, I guess. Drive neighborhood with fire and spray down just to sanitize the place, because they thought if water would kill it or something.
So that was like sanitization, social distancing, but really, like on the serious side of it, social distancing. Okay, 1 second. Let me see here. So on the social distancing side, in a culture that goes to the market every day and is day-to-day subsistence, social distancing is something that is a privilege of the wealthy. And in America, it's hard to imagine that. You say to yourself, well, why don't they just like stay away from each other for a little while and social distance? But when you have to buy food every day, you don't have refrigeration, and you have to go to the market or you have to work every day, or you don't eat, it's really difficult to social distance. And if you live in a multi-generational household that has many families all together, it's almost impossible. So with that, we found markets. There was one tested a market in and there was 80% of the people in the market had COVID, but everybody had to be there because they needed food for that day. So it was very different. In
Wow. We have a picture of some of the signage.
oh,
So what are we looking at here?
This is them trying to spell lockdown. Oh,
so
Okay.
lockdown actually means a type of leaf. Lockdown is a leaf, and so they put up a sign that said "lockdown." Don't.
Wow.
And then that download. That was the last one. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
And then we have,
they
if
use slow down.
if you owned a store and decided to operate your store when you weren't supposed to, that was problematic as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, they would move these big fire trucks and spray down the store, all their supplies, and
Most of the business open fronts, and they just blasted them, destroying, especially like the cement, just destroying everything.
Yeah. So the
I think we
if you didn't catch what was going on there, that was enforcement. So for those store owners that weren't following the rules, the military came by with water cannons and were actually spraying streams of water into their stores. Just, I guess that was policy. So, and then we have kind of a video that's a little on the sadder side too, that people were being punished for actually worshiping, right? Yeah. So what was happening there?
could you imagine a police officer doing that to someone in the United States?
Unreal. So, if you thought COVID quarantine in Maine was bad, well, there were some people that had it much worse in other parts of the world. So, all right, that's all we have for tonight. So, a special thank you to our guests, Tim and Doris. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, it was a great pleasure to have you with us this past Sunday, and hope that this relationship we've kind of begun, can go on for a really long time. So God bless you and your family and the work that you're doing. For those of you that don't know, Tim and Doris are doing just kind of this incredible job of trying to raise a lot of money that is going to make a really, really huge difference, a big impact in the Asian Pacific area with ministries that they're involved in over there. So thank you for being obedient to the Lord. And I look forward to hearing some more of these stories down the road from you guys.
Thank you.
All right. And Terry, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This probably will not be the last time that you have to do this. So
Awesome.
it wasn't so bad, right?
No.
All right. For those of you that may be following after you, piece of cake, right?
Yeah.
Nothing to it. So, and you got fed.
I have a piece of cake.
Yeah, you did. So thank you so much for joining us on Curtis Lake Prime Time. We'll see you again next Wednesday, 8:00. Have a great week. And don't forget, try this at home. It's really easy and you can do it. All right. Take care.